Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast powered by eBay Motors Group. It is Saturday the 27th of August and you're joined by myself, Philip Nothard.
And me, Curtis Hutchinson. This is episode 46, season 8 of Motor Trade Radio, bringing you all the chatter that matters. Once again, we've gathered together this week's big car retailing stories across the franchised and independent sectors for you to enjoy all in one place, on demand, on your podcast feed.
Well, brace yourselves. Get a coffee, cup of tea, whatever you're in Godball's world. It's a cup of tea, Yorkshire tea that is as well. But we've got some shout outs and then we've got a very, very busy show today. So, last week, just mentioning Ian Godball there, fantastic interview there. We played a snippet on last Saturday's show and we shared the full interview on Monday of last week. But if you missed it, do check that out. A great interview there with Ian Godball, who many of you will know, and a bit of a sort of a masterclass in digital marketing and how velocity trading can be applied for used car sales. So don't miss that one if you haven't had the chance to listen to that yet.
Yeah, and let's not forget it's available anytime, any place, anywhere.
Yes,
which is Ian's approach to digital marketing. So you'll have to listen to the full episode to find out what all that's about.
And we've also got, this week, we caught up with Derren Martin from Cap HPI for the extended chat about, obviously, the used market and trade values in August and what that means going into the month of September. And particularly, we asked him around what would be the impact around the new plate, which is on Thursday of this week, the new 72 plate. So, again, that was shared on Friday of last week. Do listen to the full interview there, but we will be playing you a short snippet of this morning as well for you to listen to.
And we've got an exclusive today, so our thanks to our sponsor, eBay Motors Group, for sharing a sneak preview of its market view analysis of pricing, stocking, and buyer demand trends over the course of August. So that's ahead of publication next week.
And also today we've got the return of Stephen Whitton, who joins us later on in the show with his latest on his Menable Moment. So don't miss that one and stay tuned for that one at the midway break.
And also a big shout out to all the dealers preparing for the 72 plate change, which is launched this coming Thursday. So, of course, providing some much needed Q3 stimulus to the markets. And we will talk about the new car market over the course of this show because there's a couple of stories that touch on it. But just a big shout out because we know that you guys are busy preparing both front of house and back office for the big day and the big month.
And you talk about headlines there. So what have we got to talk about today then, Curtis?
Okay, headlines this week from AM, Car Dealer and Motor Trader. Used price, stock turn and consumer demand trends for August. Only 5% of car buyers are influenced by the new plate change, says Motorpoint research. How supply chain issues are inflicting reputational damage on car dealers. Lookers outperforms expectations with £47.2 million profit in the first half of this year, and rising cost of cheaper electric cars could actually put them out of reach of buyers.
So before we go any further, here's an extract from our interview with Cap HPI's Director of Valuations, Derren Martin, talking about the value performance in August of this year.
Derren, the latest Cap HPI editorial has just been published. So can you start by bringing us up to date with that all-important headline 3-year 60,000 figure for August and maybe give it a bit of context by telling us how that compares with previous August?
So the headline figure at 3 years is 0.3% down, which is quite a small movement. Obviously, it's down. It's about £45 on average. So it's quite similar to previous August. Actually, we generally the last two Augusts were very unusual because we had last year values going up. The year before that was a strong one as well because it was sort of we came out of the first lockdown, didn't we, over that sort of summer? So ignoring those 2 years, this is one of the strongest movements we've had of a 0.3. And I think 7 out of the last 10 years, we've had a movement of less than 1% down. So it's a fairly normal month in percentage movement terms, but it doesn't feel particularly normal because off the back of the previous 3 months, really, where they've also been very flat. So we had this sort of summer of plateauing, where values have been very steady overall. There's obviously lots within that, as we always talk about, with various fuel types and sectors, but that movement of 0.3% is more or less in line with August, but it doesn't paint the whole picture, because you've got stronger values. You've actually got movements up on younger used cars, an average of 0.1% up at 1 year, and more than that at 6 months. And then older stuff is down sort of 2.2%, so is struggling by more. So that's about £100 on a 10-year-old car. So you've got lots of moving parts within it, but the 0.3% is that headline figure.
And on that point, I mean, we've had 7 months now of drops, and we've got to be careful, haven't we? Because when we talk about a drop, they're not significant drops in the market. And as you've just clearly said there, that 0.3 is a strong August into September movement, really, in all things considered. But and you do make it very clear in the editorial that this is a plateau period, not a decline. And we've got to be careful how the message goes out about this, don't we, to the sector?
Yeah, definitely. It is a definite plateauing. What you have to realise, and we very easily forget, is that values tend to come down. Cars will deflate as they get older in their life cycle. Cars depreciate. They are generally a depreciating asset. Last year was highly unusual, and so was the previous year. We have had years of strength, but 2019 was a weaker year. So values do tend to come down. In 2019, values over this 4-month summer period, values dropped by 8.4%. I was looking back at sort of more normal years. 2016 was probably a very normal year for valuations. And in that year, values dropped by just over 5% between May and August. And this year, they've dropped by just 2%, just over 2% over that same period. So we've had a real flat summer. And basically, as we've said before, because supply and demand are well matched, but both being on the low side, because obviously you've got low new car supply, so low numbers of part exchanges and especially fleet returns. And then you've got low demand, which we've or lower than normal demand because of the cost of living crisis that we put it down to. So a very, very flat summer for valuations, really, for values.
And before we look at the figures in detail, Derren, what have dealers been telling you about stock levels for the month?
I would say that the general thing to say about feedback from retailers is it's very mixed. There's not necessarily a pattern. You've got some that are doing better than others. I think stock levels are okay, but they would all like more clean cars, cap clean cars. They are struggling to buy at the prices they want to buy for. And I think we're in that situation where trade prices remain high and retail is under a little bit of pressure. And in that situation, it's quite hard to buy at the prices that are out there now and get a margin. So we've definitely seen some margin squeeze, and that's probably the theme from most dealers, is that their margins are under a lot more pressure than they were. And obviously last year they were making good money, excellent money. So this year it just has been a little bit harder, and they're having to work a bit harder. But stock levels, I would say, are just about okay, but it is tough to buy decent cars at the moment just because of that shortage.
Well, again, we always say, have a listen to the full interview that was published on Friday of this week. Great interview, as always, there with Derren, sharing his thoughts of what's happening in the market. And there with that 0.3% movement down for the month of August and going into September, but very clearly talking about a plateau, not a decline. This is a fairly stable marketplace at the minute. So, as always, I think you and I felt it a great interview, with Derren there, Curtis.
Yeah, definitely. And some interesting observations he makes about plateauing, especially around that 4-month summer period and going back year on year. So some interesting comments there from Derren. And as you said earlier, we did ask him about how the September market will affect the used market and future thoughts, for values. So do catch the full interview. It is available on your podcast feed. So starting with stories this week with eBay Motors Group and their market view, which is published over the course of this week. So very much a sneak preview here. So if we start with prices, so the average price of used cars remained flat in August as stock volumes continue to dip and days to sell improved. So the average price of used cars for the month was £16,630, which is up month on month by 0.1%, but that's such a marginal figure. I think we're talking about £11. So it does show the sort of stability of used prices, which very much reflects what Derren was saying in the wholesale, in the trade world as well. So those movements are very slight. And if you compare that year on year, £16,630 is actually 9.6% up on August last year. And the price movements across the sectors are quite interesting. So car supermarkets, they saw average prices rise by 1.2%. So that was actually the highest rise to £16,895, followed by franchise dealers up 0.7% to £20,352, whilst independents were down 0.4% to £13,967.
And talking about demand, because that's obviously on the forefront of a lot of people's minds at the minute. Some of the stats that, in looking at the sort of the days to sell, the average days to sell was at 35.6. That was a drop of 7% month on month compared to July of this year, that was at 38.3. But when you start to compare that with August of last year, that was at 34.9, that's an increase of 1.8%. But actually, when you start looking at it by dealer type, car supermarkets, slight increase up to 28.8 compared to the month of July. Franchise dealers was actually down to 31.3 days, and that was down from 34.4 of July of last year. And independents fairly stable at 44.9 days compared to 46 days average for the month of July. But again, we don't want to go through every single stat in this report. We do urge you to head over to the eBay Motors Group website, and you'll be able to get sight of the full report that goes into a lot of detail around demand by fuel type, demand by manufacturer, and even down to model level, and obviously giving those main key indicators as well, showing some of that strength and weakness by particular sectors and how they are performing both month on month and year on year.
Yeah, and as you say, the full report's available on Thursday at ebaymotorsgroup.co.uk, and we'll also share that on the Motor Trade Radio social media channels.
So heading over to the first headline of today, and this is coming from AM Online, and a report that Motorpoint have done an in-car survey with customers, and the headline is only 5% of car buyers influenced by new plate change. Now, obviously, we just mentioned that the plate change is of Thursday of this week with the new 72 plate, but some interesting stats coming out of this one, that how important now is that? You and I are probably old enough, Curtis, that I've spent many an evening, 31st of August. Well, it was 31st of July when it used to be an August plate in the good old days, and getting those deliveries ready and the handbooks ready and paperwork, and having the 12 o'clock collection that people come down to. I think those days were long gone, and then we moved obviously into the dual plates, and I think it's it's not as important as it used to be these days by the looks of this.
No, and you know what, Phil? Even seasoned professionals like you and I, we've still got to really sit down and think, what is the September plate? Or at least I do. And it is, of course, 72. That's the plate that goes on sale this coming week. And this research is interesting because it does suggest. So that the research is of 1,000 in-market car buyers, and it was conducted on Motorpoint's behalf by Survey Goo. And it found that just under 5% of these buyers said they were concerned about timing a purchase to coincide with a plate change. So only 5% are saying that they're basing their buying decision around a plate change. And I guess what really leapt out of the survey for me was that top of the list in terms of considerations was more than 3/5 of these would-be buyers actually listed fuel type as their main consideration now. And that's actually ahead of price, which traditionally you would expect it to be price, but price was a consideration for 52.2% and then dropping down to running costs at 47.1%.
Yeah, no, you're right. And you know, Dean Walker, who's the director of stock and purchasing there at Motorpoint, does make a comment that the study does confirm what they suspected, that that plate is no longer a major factor in the decision making process for a car buyer. And I suppose it is because it's probably back to your point earlier that we had to think about what actual plate we were on now. And you don't tend to notice as much, do you, on the road these days of the new plates as we once did. I mean, you used to be able to, see who's driving the car with the latest plates, and it's becoming less prominent these days, more than ever. It is all about price and type of vehicle, etc., that people are obviously looking at these days.
Yeah, well, you've got to have your wits about you to actually be able to digest the registration plate before it disappears. So, so it's difficult to know what's new and what's not. But I will be looking out for these new plates, and I'm
Yes.
sure you will as well, Phil.
I'm sure people were showing them off because they might be the minority that's managed to get a new plate this year
Yeah.
with the supply shortages that are taking place. But but we're staying with AM Online and talking about supply shortages there, and the header is supply chain issues inflicting reputational damage on car dealers. And this is basically coming from Car Brothers Motor Finance that are looking at the sector, and the car dealers themselves, albeit it's not their fault with the delays that are taking place of new vehicle supply, but they are taking the brunt of it at the front end, aren't they?
Yeah, so nearly half of the respondents to this research by Close Brothers Motor Finance found that 48% of consumers considering a new car purchase said that delays negatively impacted their perception of motor dealers. So it's the dealers who are getting the flack, not necessarily the OEMs. And while 46% said long delivery times damaged their view on car brands, so it is very much the dealers in the firing line there.
Yeah, and you can see why, can't you? That's happening, and it's all to do with obviously the challenges there, and I mean it's always been very difficult pre even this significant lead time that you've got, is that you'd have issues with the supply of a vehicle for one reason or another, and the customers are not really interested as to the reason. They just want to know where their new vehicle is and why they've not got it. But interestingly, there is comment in here from Mike Hawes, isn't there, from the chief exec of the SMMT, and this week the production figures came out for the UK market, and he's obviously citing that we need to get on top of this supply shortages, and obviously for the UK market, that we are starting to see challenges around it, and he's obviously citing concern around the consecutive decline in registrations that we're continuing to see, which is cited directly to supply issues.
Yeah, and an interesting point there that a lot of the consumers that were questioned said that the delays were actually taking away the excitement of buying a new car, which is, I guess, something that we tend to forget about. It is a big purchase. It's a big emotive purchase that is very exciting for a lot of customers, but not if they've got to wait for several months.
Well, that's it, and they get to the point of, I was talking to somebody the other day and said, "When's your new car coming?" Don't know. Date's been changed
Yeah.
3 or 4 times, and now I can't get a date. So, they just, like you say, it just takes that shine away from that new vehicle purchase, unfortunately. So, it's a pity. But let's hope, as we said right at the start, let's hope that we get a reasonable September and it does generate some activity, it generates some stimulus in the market and generates those much needed part exchanges coming into the network.
You're listening to All the Chatter That Matters on Motor Trade Radio, powered by eBay Motors Group. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media, available on demand wherever you are on your podcast feed. And now we're delighted to welcome our mental health and well-being guru, Stephen Whitton, for the latest Menable Moment. This week, Steve poses a philosophical question for us all.
Yeah, hi guys, and thanks for having me back for another Menable Moments. Hope you're well. Hold on to your hat, I'm about to get all deep and philosophical. And I know you're probably thinking, wow, that's not like Steve to do that. But I am, and I'm going to ask you the question, are you doing or being what you're meant to be? God, that is deep. And the reason I say that is from a well-being perspective, and I was reminded of this personally this week, because I was doing something on Saturday that totally gives me joy and puts me in my comfort zone, and is, if I was to describe what I'm on the planet for, it's this. And in that particular instance, I was emceeing or comparing or hosting an event. It was a charity event, and the intention was to rev up the audience, get them engaged, and hopefully get them supporting and donating, which they did in their droves. So that was great. But at the end of the evening, the feedback I was getting was, oh, wow, you were good at this and all that sort of stuff. Now, that just feeds the fact that says to me that that's exactly what I'm meant to be. And it fits with my purpose, which I've defined as helping people to have happy lives again. Now, if I compare that to times where I'm sat and going through a bit of trudge, maybe it's that VAT return that I keep putting off, or tax returns that I do at the last minute, or anything that involves data or spreadsheets. There's a bit of a theme going on here, isn't there? That sort of stuff does not fill me with glee, doesn't fill me with joy, doesn't make me want to get up and get on with it. And that links to my personality profile, which I'm very, very well aware of, as you would imagine I would be. And also linked to that is some stuff that I'm going to be doing over the coming weeks with some dealers and also with an OEM, which actually links to other people's personality profiles and giving them some help and support in terms of what that needs to look like for their own skill development. And at the heart of that is the question about, are you doing or being what you're meant to be? And a rather harsh statement is that actually it's not my job to change who I am in order to make you or other people feel comfortable. And I think sometimes that can also be the thing that's a bit like those spreadsheets that kind of drags you down, holds you back, that you're changing your behavior, you're changing who you are in order to fit the environment or in order to fit the people around you because of the feedback that you've got or whatever it might be. So I know that's deep and philosophical, and I know that many of you will take from that what you will, but I'm going to put out a little bit of an offer actually to help with that. And that is, if any Motor Trade Radio podcast listeners would like a 20-minute consultation with me, just to chat, no obligation, just a free chat, just to talk through this stuff, one-to-one on a Zoom call, then please drop me an email at action@menable.org. I'd love to have a chat with you, because I do know we're living in a world that's very stressful. There's lots of anxiety. There's lots of stuff going on, lots of uncertainty, lots of change. And your personality type will be driving how you react to that. And so the question of, are you being what you're meant to be? For some of you, you may be in a position where you can't do what you're meant to be because actually the bills that need paying dictate what you're doing and all of that stuff. But it doesn't mean that in your heart you still can't be who you're meant to be. And I would love to help you out with that. So Yeah, drop me a line, action@menable.org. There's a free 20-minute consultation for anyone who wants one. We can set that up very easily and would love to have a chat with you. In the meantime, keep on keeping on. Have a great weekend. Catch you soon. See you guys. Bye.
Well, many thanks.
Is that a song quote there? The keep on keeping on.
It is, yeah. That's an earworm that's started already in my head.
No, I mean, again, always, he starts off. You kind of know where you're going when he poses a question like that right at the start of his little moment. But as always, he's there to help. He's on the end of a phone. He's at the end of a social media message. Just get in touch with Stephen. He's more than happy to help out. And if you do want to drop him an email, then you can do it, Stephen. That's with a PH. Whitton, WHITTON at Menable. That's MENABLE.org. Or you can get in touch with him through LinkedIn or Twitter as well. So please do get in touch with Stephen if you want to chat about anything that he's on with, or you just want to chat to him. He's open-armed and ready and waiting.
Yeah, and do take him up on that offer of a 20-minute consultation, free consultation. If not for yourself, if you think one of your colleagues would appreciate that, then do pass the information on to them.
Exactly. So we're heading back over to AM Online, but also Motor Trader now on some outputs and releases on Lookers, because this week Lookers shared their latest financial performance, and it was a good result as well. But there's also other things that Lookers have announced this week as well, what they're on with. So again, starting with AM Online, that Lookers outperforms expectations with a 47.2 million profit in the first half of this year. And essentially, this is down to used car performance, isn't it, Curtis?
Yeah, very much driven by used car performance and after sales. And the £47.2 million profit is actually better than expected. It's better than what they were expecting to post. And it's down 5.6% year on year from 50 million. But as the group points out, that same period in 2021 actually included £12.7 million of government support. So it was very, very strong performance. And it's great to see Lookers punching its weight again, because it's not that long ago that it was having all sorts of problems and setbacks, but it's very much on an even keel now. So looking at revenues, Lookers said revenues of £2.23 billion for that first half were mostly driven by used cars and after sales, and profit performance underpinned by, interesting point here, profit performance underpinned by material improvements in new vehicle gross profit margins. So new vehicles still making a significant contribution there. And talking about new cars, the group currently has a new car order bank of 22,000 units leading into the second half of 2022. Now, without any context, it's difficult to know if that's good or bad, but that actually compares to just 9,000 units a year ago.
Yeah, and I think that's the case for many. There'll be many franchise dealers listening this morning that are probably maybe not to that level of volume, but still sort of got full order banks. And that's the kind of message going into the month of September, that order banks are full for September. It just depends on what volume level they've got. But again, like you say, in comparison there, I mean, to be up from 9,000 to 22,000, that shows they've still got a significant way to go to get those things on site and out the door. But I think, clearly they've turned a corner. Duncan McPhee, who's the Lookers Chief Executive Officer, did tell AM that they are cautiously optimistic about the second half of the year. They've, as you say, Curtis, healthy order bank. September will provide some hopefully quality business for them, and some of the OEMs are less affected than others. And interesting, that was sort of cited in the interview with Derren Martin about the activity in the marketplace. But they are on with other things, particularly around EV and things like that, aren't they?
They are, yeah. I mean, interesting as part of the announcement. And if we just flip over to Motor Trader for this story, and the headline there is "Lookers to trial Cube used car concept in the Northeast." So this is Lookers saying that they're currently working on a used car multi-franchise concept at a 8-acre site, and they're calling it a full cube site somewhere in the northeast that could actually become a blueprint for other regions in the UK. So the group is looking to repurpose an existing site that it has before launching this new cube concept in Q2 next year. And yeah, they do hint that if successful, a handful of other cube used car centres will follow. So we'll follow that one with keen interest.
Yeah, and they're obviously getting very much in terms of that EV world as well, that these multi-franchise new used car sites and service and MOT, but high voltage EV charging, as well as an EV experience centre. So really jumping on the back of that EV opportunity now going forward. But speaking of EVs, and the final story of today is we're heading over to Car Dealer. And this is rising cost of cheaper electric cars could put them out of reach for buyers. Now, you did pre-pandemic, we're at the point where we expected, as volume started to increase of electric vehicles, enter the new market, enter the used market, they then become more and more affordable and more new models enter the market. But it seems to be a little bit slower and not quite the case.
Yeah, definitely. So this story is based on some research done by electrifying.com, the website led by Ginny Buckley, and they identify the increasing cost of lower priced EVs, and that's the real key to this story. It's those entry models, and because the prices are rising, it's stopping many people from making the switch to electric. And they make the point that this time last year, electric cars costing under £35,000 still qualified for that £2,500 government grant, with the cash support cut to £1,500 in December, and then withdrawn altogether. So this leaves really new entrants into the market in a difficult position, because if you're in the market to sell a new car, you've got to pitch it right in terms of pricing, and if you're in the market to buy a car, it's got to be affordable. And they actually single out the Honda E as one of these sort of lower end cars, and they've tracked how certain versions of that have gone up in price, with one version now 30% more expensive than it was a year ago, and that bringing it up to a cost of £36,920.
Yeah, and again, you're citing the conversation there with Derren in the interview that we had with him on Friday. But again, he cites the alternative fuel sector rising, the EV sector rising, and does highlight a couple of the models that have seen a growth in value. But me and Curtis were chatting before the show. I listened to something the other day, and they were talking about the average price of an electric vehicle over in the US and compared to the average salary over in the US, and made us think, what does that look like in the UK? But actually, in the US, the average cost of a new electric vehicle is $66,000, very much dominated by Tesla over there in the US. But that compares to an average salary of $54,000 in the US there. But actually, when you start to look at the UK, that the average salary in the UK is just short of 26,000, the medium average of that. But actually, that compares to a UK average cost of March of this year of £44,000 sterling for a new electric vehicle. And that was potentially before what you've just been talking about, those increases of those costs of EVs. So again, the cost of an EV is still significantly outweighing an average salary in both in the marketplaces in general. So there's a little bit of way to go in there.
Yeah, and I did a tiny bit of research before we started recording, Phil. It's interesting what you say about the average salary being £26,000 in the UK, because the MG4 EV, which is a small SUV being retailed as an affordable entry point into electric, cost £25,995. So, absolutely bang on that 26,000 average for salaries. So, it's effectively costing a full salary to actually get a step on the ladder for MGs. Now, interestingly, I did a bit of research on some other EVs, and quite a few of the brands they're not actually being that forward in the list price and are really retailing according to the monthly costs, affordable monthly costs. And of course that's the way the market has gone with PCPs, but I suspect it will be even more so with EVs.
Yeah, exactly. So, say lots going on in the marketplace, lots to think about. As we always say with these headline shows, do head over to the media houses there and check out the stories in full that we've sort of given you a quick highlight of, and other stories that they've been running throughout the week. Please do have a check into the full interview there with Derren Martin from Kappa HPI. I'll give you the view on what's happening and how to take the context from it and what to expect over the coming weeks and what their view is on that. And if you did miss it, do check out the interview there, as I said right at the start of the show, with Ian Godbold and that digital retailing of used cars. So do check out that, and I'm sure you'll be listening this morning, and we'll have to say, check out how the football went as well, Ian. But but lots going on, lots to think about, and lots to consider. So hopefully you enjoyed today's show.
That's all for now. You've been listening to the weekly Motor Trade Radio podcast powered by eBay Motors Group. Many thanks for joining us for all the chatter that matters. We're back again next week with a special episode dedicated to a full interview with Cambria Automobiles' Mark Lavery in what is his first Motor Trade Radio interview since leading the group's MBO last year. So you won't want to miss that.
Yeah,
so
stay tuned for tune in for that one.
Yeah, with that spoiler alert and all that, he was on absolutely top form, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. No, please do not miss that one. But that's it. That's it for us this week. And Curtis, you're taking a well-earned rest for a few weeks now, aren't you?
I am. I will be listening to this show probably on a plane heading for Australia. But I might come back, Phil.
Please do.
Yeah, thank you very much. So until next week, next weekend, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.